Hi, this is Li Jingwen. Welcome to my mastery project number 2. At the heart of this project is innovation. It's an exploration of how visualized thinking can transform the way that we teach and learn literature analysis. Okay, let me introduce my team. And I am the course coordinator of IGCSE 0475 English Literature Program. And I have the privilege of leading a dedicated team of teachers. And our primary role is to collaborate on course planning, aligning our course assessment, and develop resource, and all to provide a seamless and enriching learning experience for our students. Let me introduce my team. And first, we have Samuel. Samuel is our new teacher that joined us from Singapore last year. And guiding our year 10 students, we have Melissa and Isaac. Both are highly experienced educators from Hong Kong and bringing them with over 15 years of teaching experience. And for our year 11 students, instructions is handled by our senior teacher, Denise from America, and Mira from Malaysia, and me from Guangzhou, China. The IGCSE 0475 is a 2-year journey for students aged 14 to 16. They usually start at a year 10 and then take public exam at the end of year 11. The curriculum is no small feat. Students need to deep dive into Cambridge prescribed set tests, spanning poetry, prose, and drama. This extensive range of material demands early preparation to tackle the breadth of the content, and my team and I rely on a long-term planning, proactive lesson design to ensure our students are well prepared and confident for their exams. What truly sets the literature course apart is the dynamic syllabus. To keep the material culturally diverse, relevant, and fair for assessment, this list of set tests is updated every year. To put that into perspective, about half of the prose tests here, you can see for 2025 will be replaced by 2026 exam. So for our team, this translates into a constant cycle of redesigning significant portions of our lesson and teaching material. An excellent grade in IGCSE literature signals that a student possess academic English literacy on par with the native speaker. It gives them a significant competitive edge in their application. However, what's happening here is with 90% of our students being English second language learner, the challenge is really profound. Beyond cultural and linguistic gaps, they face the unseen text paper, and that is like 25% of the final grade is a component worth 25%. And here, the students must analyze a poem or a prose passage they have never seen before. So under extreme time pressure, produce a coherent, insightful essay will be really difficult. So beyond any specific text or exam, my colleagues notice a more fundamental challenge. The very nature of our generation read is changing. They are the digital natives immersed in a world of fast-paced, fragmented information. Neuroscientist Marianne Rolfe, in her book Reader Come Home, explained how constant scheming and scrolling on digital devices is actively eroding the brain's capacity for deep reading. It strikes at the very heart of literature analysis. For my team, we are actively working against the tide of superficial reading in order to rebuild the focus required to truly engage with the text. So if you look at the students on the left, let me tell you, this is an expression I saw in many literature class, a mix of confusion, effort, and a touch of uncertainty. They look really gets to the heart. They look really gets to the heart of some profound challenges that we need to solve. The first of which is the implicitness of the analytical process. When teachers assess an essay, we mark them. Usually we only see the final product. It's a tip of the iceberg. And teachers have no visibility into valuable evolutions of students' idea. Unless they do many drafts and they submit it to you, And it like I said, goes back and forth of this kind of marking and constantly improving. Or else it would be really hard to know what's happening behind it, beneath the surface. So as teachers, we end up grading the outcome, but miss the entire journey of growth. But this visible internal challenge or internal struggle is often mirrored by the visible one in the classroom. Discussions are usually dominated by a few voices. This dynamic not only leads to disengagement, it sort of creates an echo chamber effect where only a narrow range of viewpoints are shared and repeated, while other perspectives might be excluded. So it forces us to confront a critical question at the bottom of the slides. So how can we fairly recognize the effort and intellectual growth, not just the final result? How do we meaningfully incorporate these learning gains into our assessment? And most importantly, how do we capture those sparks of creativity and every student's thought process and ensure every single voice is truly heard? On the other hand, in order to specify the core problems our team is facing when teaching IGCSE literature, I sat down with my team one-on-one to find out what's really challenging them. First, I spoke with Melissa. She's incredibly thoughtful about our curriculum design. Her main feeling is that our current syllabus is just too bloated and not very student-friendly. She's looking for a way to see a larger storyline and how those units are connecting. And she was very clear that her lesson prep is just too labor-intensive. And next, I talked to Samuel, and he just started earlier last year. So he really focused on his own professional growth now and the team's process. He told me if I could just rehearse before the lesson and get some feedback from my colleagues, teachers and senior teachers, it would help a lot. And he also pointed out that sometimes he doesn't have a clear time boxes or checkpoint. So he ended up spending too much time on certain topics. Then I had a great chat with Mira and Denise. They are our true champions for collaboration. Their big points was that we all tend to plan lessons alone in our own silos. So we would be much stronger if we collaborated more. So they also had a sharp insight on our observation. It suggests that it would be more efficient to give feedback on specific moment rather than the whole class. And Isaac is always thinking about the bigger picture and our stakeholders. He's the one who reminds me what we need to help is our administrators and family to understand what we are doing and how they can genuinely support us and our students. And finally, it brings me to my own perspective. I tend to look at the systematic challenges, and what holds us back. And my concern is that we are flying blind with limited data. It hurts our evaluation and our lesson study cycle. I'm focused on building a real development plan for our teachers, especially for our new teachers, making our training more time efficient, and of course, having to deal with a budget constraint. So this conversation revealed a very clear theme. Our problems are diverse, and our team needs a way to improve without waiting for a master plan. And we need a process, not a perfect product. And this process is the iterative approach. The iterative approach is a cyclical process of design, prototyping, feedback, and refinement. Instead of seeking a perfect, finalized solution from the outset, this approach emphasizes a gradual process through a continuous testing and improvement. So each cycle functions as a small experiment. Teacher designed a prototype, implemented it in the practice, collect authentic feedback from maybe students or peers, and use those insights to make a targeted revision. This process embodies a principle of creative agility, where learning emerges from experimentation, reflection, adaptation, and rather than fixed planning. I find iterative approach aligns perfectly with the goal of collaborative professional growth. It transformed the curriculum design into a collective inquiry cycle: plan, prototype, text, reflect, and adjust. So where teachers share unfinished work, exchange constructive feedback, and co-develop solutions grounded in classroom evidence. So prototyping allows the team to fail small and learn fast. That's what I like about it. And identifying issue early before large-scale implementation. Furthermore, by integrating diverse disciplinary perspective across the multiple iteration, teachers can build richer and more responsive curriculum design. So in this way, iteration supports both collective creativity and sustained innovation. And when we think about storyboarding, we usually think of movie, but that's when I want to incorporate it into the iterative design cycle. So it's actually the cornerstone for prototyping in design thinking process. At the core of storyboarding, it's like a bridge from an abstract idea to tangible reality. It uses a sequence of image to map out the process or experience, allowing the team to clearly visualize a complex flow of thinking. So critically, it also helps us incorporate the user's emotional response at each step, so we can understand the why behind our action. As a prototype, its value is immense, and it allows a rapid iteration and comparison. By forcing us to visualize how product would actually be used, we can spot gaps, friction points, and potential errors long before investing significant time and money. So here's the 5-step process on the left in the framework that guarantee we meet those goals. We start with introduction and objective to set the context, and then we immediately define the evaluation strategy, forcing us to map out each step and ensure all the components are fitting together. Then we plan the content sequence and practice activity to create a logical flow. We get a specific detail, all graphics, and maybe some media that we are going to use, like images or video, for an easy handoff. And finally, we build in feedback and summarize, allowing us to create a quick demo and get the formative feedback we need. I identify 4 key areas where storyboarding provides a practical and highly efficient solution for my team. First, to address Melissa's challenge of a bloated syllabus with no clear storyline, in the future, we can use unit storyboard to build a single one-page yearly storyline. So this kind of create a traceable narrative she was asking for and serve as a reusable tool and for onboarding new staff or for communicating our curriculum to stakeholders. Secondly, storyboarding fundamentally improves our limited feedback loop. It serves as a rehearsal that Samuel wished for, and enabling a rapid micro-teaching section. And this allowed our colleagues to provide a targeted glow and grow feedback on specific moments that Denise and Mira suggested, making the revision process faster and more focused. And third, it breaks down the teacher's silos by fostering true collaboration, using shared templates, and we can divide the labor of curriculum development, allowing teacher to build modules in parallel. So this can be seamless integrated during our regular PD meeting in a storyboard, maybe a storyboard walkthrough, build a shared resource library without requiring extra meeting time. And our teachers are very busy, I know. So finally, storyboarding allows us to discover a lesson flow bottlenecks proactively. So instead of relying on trial and error in a classroom, a quick 5-minute micro teach using storyboard can immediately review where students might struggle. So this shift our process from being reactive to being preemptive, saving time, creating more effective instructional material from the start. And here is a one-page visual planner that is a narrative blueprint designed to shift our thinking to be more student-centered. It begins by establishing the why and who of the unit, defining the essential question, a compelling narrative hook, and the student's active role as the protagonist or certain character will be clear, accessible goals. So next, it maps out how the learning journey itself, starting with visual hook and moving through the daily cycle of engage, examine, and act. So critically, this template embeds two key features for better design. A section with proactively planning for potential difficulties and for their solutions, and a building glow and grow feedback loop. So this transformed the templates from a static lesson plan into a dynamic tool for collaborative iteration. So here's a design which structure to follow the narrative and inquiry-driven learning model organized to mirror how we naturally engage a chapter. For example, in The World of Walls by H.G. Wells, it starts with the hook, the image cue, to create an immediate emotional and visual engagement. So this is the inciting incident that captures the student's attention. The curiosity is then immediately channeled to the intellectual work by essential question, which sets the big idea for the entire unit. The leading question then scaffold this abstract inquiry, making it concrete and accessible by linking it to the relevant modern-day issues. The most critical part of this organization is the student's role. And this is deliberate pedagogical move to shift the students from passive receiver to active protagonists in their own learning. By framing them as, in this case, is the civilization diagnosticians. So it gives them the agency and a clear purpose. The final section, the beginning, mid section, and endpoint logically flows from that role, and it's not a list of assignment. It's the plot of their mission, providing a clear narrative arc that guide them from initial analysis to meaningful summative product. Okay, so storyboarding is structured to be practical, the bottom-up lesson design, where the plan is built around solving anticipated problem. The layout is all about proactive problem solving. I deliberately place potential difficulties at the top. It forced me to first identify the specific points where the students will likely get stuck or confused. The strategy section is the direct and pre-planned solution to these problems. Okay, so ensuring I have the right tools like the specific analytical framework ready from the start. The entire introduction script at the bottom is the result, that planning. It's a step-by-step execution script that flows from that strategy, logically moving from the setting of the scene to guide inquiry, and finally to quick formative assessment. And here's how we get practical, focusing on the skill acquisition and the feedback loop as for us as teacher. I designed this entire lesson chunk on the left, the scenario, the action, the evidence, and the output as a single testable package. The action are the specific skill that we want to practice teaching. The evidence and output sections are how we will measure if it work. The entire package is then put directly into the micro-teaching cycle. You can see on the right. And this is how we get better. We plan this small, maybe 15 minutes lesson conducted with a few colleagues in PLC or PD. We get immediate discussion and feedback and then replan it. So it's a systematic, low-risk way to master our own skill, get instant feedback, and gain confidence before we ever take it to the full class. And that feedback loop isn't just a theory. Here's an actual glow and grow feedback I receive on a storyboard. I receive on this storyboard prototype. The glow was was an excellent validation. In here, you can see Samuel confirmed that beginning, middle, and end narrative structure works perfectly, calling it an actionable blueprint that the students can anticipate. The grow feedback, however, is what really refines the plan. My concern, Jingwen's concern, was that the main question could lead to superficial debate and would be hard to assess. Isaac's idea solve the problem of analytical depth and by forcing multiple perspective thinking. And Melissa's idea is to solve the problem of assessment by creating a tangible tool to capture the students' thinking. So this feedback process demonstrates a key advantage of efficient collaborative prototyping. In one short cycle, the team validated the core concept while identifying how to solve the biggest flaws. So this storyboarding training is a 6-week plan to systematically move us from concept to practice, built around 3 key objectives: establishing a shared workflow, producing a ready-to-use teaching material, and creating a streamlined process for review and iteration. We began in week 1 by launching the core storyboarding concept, then immediately moving to high-level collaborative work in week 2 by drafting our annual storyline. Week 3 will be dedicated to designing specific unit and lesson storyboard. From there, we shift to practical texting. Week 4 is for low risk and micro teaching trials and rapid peer revision, which prepare us for a live classroom trial in week 5 to gather some authentic student feedback and data. Finally, in week 6, we will review all of our outcome from this cycle and develop a concrete enhancement plan, ensuring this new workflow becomes a sustainable long-term asset for our team. So this 6 weeks plan scope is small but manageable. During this pilot, our short-term goals are for each teacher to create 1 full unit storyboard, conduct 1 micro-teaching section, participating in a full unit storyboard, a full a feedback cycle, and most importantly, teachers need to run a small scale trial in 2 live classes to collect real data on student engagement. So this pilot is an engine for our long-term goals, which are scaled to which are to scale the successful outcome across all units, build a complete yearly curriculum storyboard to formalize this peer observation process. The entire initiative is to craft a refined, proven showcase for this training, backed by tangible student data, and which will serve as our model and drive our future expansion. To ensure our pilot is data-driven, we will measure the success across 3 key stakeholders level. At the department level, we will track the project execution and sustainability through 90% storyboard completion rate and 85% teacher satisfaction score. For teacher, we will assess the quality of their planning with a rubric-based score and the effectiveness of the delivery through peer observation checklist. Most importantly, for students, we will measure the impact of by tracking class-wide engagement rates and the alignment of their final work with our learning goals. The entire process will be supported by a formal assessment toolkit and a continuous feedback mechanism to ensure all improvement are based on real evidence. So we've just seen how storyboarding helps us as teacher to visualize the complex process of instructional design. But these core principles of making thinking visible doesn't just stop our planning, stop with our planning. It needs to be passed on to the student learning experience. So now let's look at how we translate this very same principle into a powerful classroom activity using two other tools, the World Café and the 6 thinking hats. To address the key challenges our ESL literature classroom, such as unequal participation and superficial analysis, we implemented a World Café method. This approach creates a structured environment for collective intelligence by guiding students through a dynamic cycle of dialogue and discovery. The process begins in small roundtable groups where students tackle a powerful, focused questions while recording their key ideas, connections, and textual evidence directly to a shared tablecloth. So every 20 to 30 minutes, participants rotate to new tables, cross-pollinating their insights, which breaks up echo chambers and helps quieter students to build confidence as they refine their contribution. The cycle of guided question, visual note-taking, and collaborative rotation makes their analytical process visible, making them move them beyond subjective reaction, and helps the entire class collectively build a deeper, evidence-driven understanding of the test. The process creates a real, an ideal environment for collaborative learning. But for that environment to be truly effective, we need to guide the type of thinking that happens inside it. And that brings us to the fundamental challenge we often see. We've all been there in the literature classroom, and one student jumps straight to a very strong opinion. Another is purely emotional, and a few are just trying to figure out what the fact of the story even are. It can feel a little bit chaotic with everyone talking past each other. So this is exactly what I was seeing in my own classroom, students mixing up logic, emotion, and judgment all at once. So this led to some common problems. Their analysis were often implicit and hard to follow. The participation of the discussion were usually unequal, and many interpretation might be overly subjective and lack real evidence from the test. So in order to tackle this, I'll turn to the framework, what we call the 6 thinking hats, developed by Edward de Bono. It's a powerful tool that gives us a structured way to think by separating out different models of thought. Essentially, each hat represents a different perspective. It guides my students to consciously shift how they are thinking. Let me walk you through how each hat works in literature classroom. First, we put on a white hat. This is our just the fact hat. So it forces us to ask, what does the text actually say? Before we can form any opinion, we have to find evidence to direct quotes and maybe some plot points and data. So this has been fundamental in teaching my students to ground their argument in the text instead of making claims without proof. And next, we switch to the red hat. This is the one all about feeling and intuition. For many of my students, especially ESL learners, articulating the emotional side of literature can be tough. The red hat makes it okay to say the character just made me angry, the scene felt really hopeful, and it validates their personal reaction, and it gives us a starting point for deeper analysis. Then we have the yellow hat. Yellow hat is our optimism hat. This is about finding the value and the strength in the text. Instead of just critiquing, we look for what works, what's powerful, what's beautiful. So this simple shift builds a much more supportive and appreciative classroom culture, which is huge and encouraging. Some students, they might be hesitant to talk sometimes. So it encourages them to participate. Of course, we also need some critical judgment. That's where the black hat comes in. This hat helps us to be skeptical in a structured way. We look for inconsistency potential weakness or risk in an argument. It's our tool to respectfully question assumptions and avoid the echo chamber where everyone just agree with the first good idea. One of my favorite hat is the green hat, actually, our creativity hat. So often you can see the students fall into a predictable formulaic interpretation. The green hats give us explicit permission to think outside the box. What if the story had a different ending? What are the characters' hidden motivation? This really expands their analytical flexibility. So finally, we have the blue hat. This is the big picture hat, the meta thinking hat. So it's what we use to manage the whole process. When we are wearing the blue hat, we summarize what we have learned from other hats, deciding what to do next, and reflect on our own thinking. So this makes this invisible process of analysis visible. And I can actually see their cognitive growth during this process. So by moving through these 6 lenses, students learn to separate and sequence their thinking. Literature analysis is no longer hidden, messy process. With this, it becomes a collaborative and structured exploration. So incorporating both the World Café and Six Thinking has to help us dig deeper. For example, in this case, it's the world of walls. And I've designed a 3-round activity that combines 2 powerful methods. The goal is to foster a deep multi-angle analysis of the novel's themes, character, and social implication through small group dialogue and rotation. The entire activity would take about 90 to 120 minutes. For the setup, we will create a cafe-style environment. Each table of maybe 4 to 5 people will have one person designated as the table host. The host stay at the table to record and summarize, while all the other participants will rotate. Let's look at round 1, perspective and emotion. So this round focuses on the white hat, the facts, and the red hat, emotion. So this specific goal here is to explore the factual basis for that infinite complacency of 19th century London, and then to capture the raw emotional reactions of different social classes during the invasion. So here's the process for this first 20 minutes round. Each table assigned a specific social class from the book, World of Walls. For example, table 1 guessed novelist, another table guessed the artery man, and the third table guessed the London crowd. So in our first 20 minutes round, we will focus on facts and emotions using white and red hats. Each table will be guided by 2 questions. One may be asking some historical facts behind the London complacency, and the other for the raw emotions of a specific social class during the invasion. The table host will record this idea throughout the discussion, and after 20 minutes, the participants rotate to a new table where the host will give maybe 2 to 3 minute summary, allowing the new members to immediately build upon the previous group's work. We will conclude this round by displaying all the poster for 1 minute gallery work and synthesize our collective finding. And now we'll move into section 2, which will take us about 40 minutes to minute 40 to 75. The core process is similar to round 1, and but our focus and our tools are challenging. Our objective here is to identify the contradiction and system both the fragility and intrinsic resilience of human civilization. To do this, we are switching hats. We will be using black hat to identify risk and problems, and yellow hat to find benefits and hope. So these themes at our table also change. And at the kickoff, we'll get a new abstract themes. Table 1 is technology, table A is technology, table B is society, table C, maybe human nature, right? So we get these different themes. Your poster will now have 2 columns, risk and hopes. So in this section, round one, our black hat question is, from the Martian's perspective, what is our lethal vulnerability in this domain? And our yellow hat question, amid the disaster, what admirable quality of humanity does it review? The host will record this, focusing on the tension between the risk and hope. The rotation process is the same, but the final output is different. Instead of gallery work, after posting the poster, I will ask 3 participants, not the host, to share one single word that captures the most striking contradiction they observe. Our final 40 minutes, section 3, is all about creativity and change using the green hat. Our objective is to brainstorm creative solution for future scenario. An alien invasion, maybe in 2098, the blue hat will be referenced throughout the entire workshop to guide reflection and structure the thinking process. So round one for section 3 is 10 minutes of pure freewheeling brainstorming, where each table generates the bold ideas and select one best concept. After rotation, the host pitches this best idea to the new members. Their job in round 2 is to improve and integrate that idea, bringing it into a more coherent solution. So the final output is a concept sketch from each table. We'll conclude the plenary vote, one vote for each person, to choose the single most anticipated future solution from our entire workshop. Next steps. So I call this section the Cafe of 6 Minds, and is a project and that integrates Edward de Bono's 6 Thinking Hats framework into the World Café rotating discussion model. And by combining these 2 approaches, the project encouraged students to think from multiple perspectives while engaging collaborative literary analysis. At the student level, the project aims to achieve balance and meaningful participation. Behaviorally, it helps to reduce the dominance of the few voices and transform discussion from simple idea sharing into collective idea building. Cognitively, it builds the students to organize their thoughts more clearly, distinguishing and applying different modes of thinking to deepen their understanding of the text. From surface plots to underlying themes, tensions, character complexities. Emotionally, it builds the confidence among quieter students, lower anxiety around literary discussion, and foster a more inclusive and collaborative classroom climate. At teacher level, At the teacher level, the project served as an effective formative assessment tool. It enabled the educator to observe the student's thinking process more transparently while developing a flexible, replicable teaching framework, complete with the adaptable thinking hats question sets for various tests. Finally, and this project addressed key challenges in ESL literature teaching by promoting equity, deep cognition, and emotional safety in learning. So in the next phase, we plan to evaluate Cafe of 6 Minds project through 3 methods: pre and pro-test writing task, using the Cambridge-based scoring rubric, and a short questionnaire using both Likert scale and open-ended question to gather students' feedback on enjoyment, usefulness, and maybe the stress level when they're doing this project. In the short term, our goal is to implement 1 full teaching unit and ensure that every student contribute at least 1 substantive comment during each World Café section. We also aim to nurture classroom culture where students make their thinking visible, view texts from multiple perspectives, and collaborate to build understanding. In long term, students will integrate and internalize the 6 thinking hats as a conscious cognitive tool and apply it spontaneously, not only to literature analysis, but also maybe to some complex decision-making in real-life context. To make the participation more inclusive and meaningful, we are introducing diversified evaluation system that goes beyond just speaking in a class. It would include 3 main types of contributions: written contribution, asynchronous contributions, and process-oriented contributions. For written contribution, we have the silent contributor role, and where one student in each group serve as a recorder or connector. Their job is not to lead the discussion, but to listen carefully, organize ideas, and document them onto the tablecloth or posters, making their thinking process visible and valuable. For asynchronous contribution, students extend their participation beyond the class by posting seed idea before our class, before our section, and completing maybe an individual reflection or discussion map afterwards. So this allowed every student, especially the quieter ones, to prepare thoughtfully and demonstrate metacognitive growth. Finally, the process-oriented contribution recognized the behind-the-scene effort, such as text evidence attributes, and gather textual reference and visual support contributor who translate the complex idea into visual forms. So this role highlighted students' research, organization, and creative thinking skills. Altogether, we aim to use this multidimensional assessment, communicate a very powerful message. Like the participation can take many valid forms: spoken, written, research, or visual, and each represents a valuable expressions of cognitive engagement. Okay, so to ensure the Café for 6 Minds project keep improving over time, we've designed a continuous improvement plan built on the real-time and reflective feedback. During each section, we will use quick anonymous polling tools like Mentimeters to collect students' immediate reflection or reactions on how the World Café helped them engage with literary analysis. This real-time data, as shown here, would help us capture authentic students' voice on aspects like confidence, evidence use, and inclusivity. At the same time, teachers would keep the observation notes to document any technical or maybe procedural issue that arise during the activity. Periodically, we will compile all resources of feedback, including the interview, observation, and students' work, to identify recurring themes and areas for refinement. So these insights will guide ongoing fine-tuning and the version iteration of the teaching model. So ensuring this remain responsive to classroom reality. And finally, this finding and refined material will be shared with other educators, promoting collaboration and wider dissemination of effective practices. And this is my reference. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks for watching.